What are you at, boys? It's Troy here. Welcome to Facility D20. We got a pretty cool video for you today. The party that I DMs for are coming up on a battle with an undead part. And what does an undead part need? An undead part ship. So this video, I'm going to take you through how I built one for them. And I tell you, boys, it hasn't been such a cool boat since Lukey painted his green.
Lukey's boat is painted green. It's the prettiest boat that you've ever seen. Me boys, you be lively.
In this video, I'm going to take you through a process of slicing the model, of printing the model, of painting it, of building the mast, and finally some pretty cool reveal shots. I'm super happy with the way this project turned out, so stick around and let's get into it. So guys, this was way too big to fit on my build plate, which is about 10 inches by 10 inches. I got this file from printablescenery.com, and luckily it also comes in 3 sections already split up for me, which made it a lot easier. So I printed this at about the 0.2 millimeter scale with about 10% infill. And this first midsection here, this is going to run about 10 hours at about $2.15 a print. The nose section, a little bigger, again at the same scale. This is going to take about 17 hours, going to run me about $3.05. And then finally, I'm going to go ahead and print the last section. That's the biggest section. This one's over a day, but 20 something hours at about $5. Of course, all the little fittings like the crow's nest and rigging for the sails. So this is a pretty cool little time lapse here. This print here was over 24 hours, and as you can see, the sun rising and setting here as this thing was printing away with no real problems and no real issues, which always makes you nervous when you got a big print. But this one came out pretty nicely. So we cut her pretty close there, and I almost ran out of filament. I'm going to go ahead and change out and put some new stuff in. I use this neat filament the last few prints. I'm not super impressed with it. It seems to crack off fairly easily. A lot of times I'll come out and it'll just be randomly cracked off. But I got a ton of this stuff, so we're going to try to use it up anyway. First piece is done. Took about 23 hours. Got a pile more prints to do. Let's get at it. First thing I'm going to do is take out this roll. Put that aside for later. Let's get a new roll in here. Want to make sure that this isn't tangled at all, so we don't get tugging and break the filament off during the print. Feed it through our spool holder so we don't get any tangles, and I'm going to unload the little piece that's left and cut a new piece. And with my printer, I need to cut this on a fairly steep angle in order for it to feed properly into the printer. Let's give that a try. So I had this printer preheated to 215 degrees at the nozzle, and let's load her up. Here we are, starting to feed it through, so we're loaded correctly. Color clear. Light is green, trap is clean, we're ready to print.
Set your entry grid, neutralize your field, and the light is green, trap is clean.
Next up, I did the midsection here. This was about 10 hours print, and this one also came out really nicely and without really any issues. And finally, I did the nose of the ship. And this was a bigger print, of course, and this one took a while, and I was a little nervous about the point on the nose of this ship, if the overhang was going to be a problem, but nah, I didn't need any supports and it printed out fine. Okay boys, we're hot off the printing press here. You can see we've got the bow, the mid, and the stern, and a whole bunch of little pieces here. There's fittings and riggings for this ship. Coming out pretty good. We're going to get this thing put together and clean up some of the problems with this 3D printing, and we're going to be good to go. It's going to be a fun little project. Looking forward to getting this thing painted. Here are little fittings, our skulls, and our crow's nest came out pretty nice at the 0.1 millimeter scale, and this is the 0.2 millimeter scale. You can see that it came out nice too, but I have some stranding issues. The little flame trick will take care of that. Midship and the stern here. Pretty nice looking ship. It's going to look real nice when it gets all painted up in that bone color. Okay, I'm going to get the cleaning. Make this thing look sharp. So the first thing I did was pull off all this excess stranding, this spider web type effect that I'm getting. I think the problem here is something to do with my temperature and retraction settings. I'm trying to work it out, but I haven't quite figured it out yet. There was a few larger burrs on this nose section that I just cut off with the X-Acto knife. Took care of that right quick. And just pretty much kissed this whole ship with the flame real fast to melt off any of that excess plastic basically. So in particular, where these bones met the wall here, that's where I was getting a lot of the issues. So I hit all that with the flame, and along with the sides, inside and outside of these parts. Now when you're doing this trick, PLA's melting temperature is really kind of low, so you don't want to leave that flame on any one part of the model at all very long, especially on small sections and details like all these skulls and bones here on the back of the ship. You can see, even though this video sped up, I'm like really quickly just kissing those parts with that flame. You want to be real careful when you're doing that. And next I just took all these fittings and threw it on my hobby drill tool and cleaned up all those fittings too. Every now and then I had to go in my X-Acto knife or my finger and just pick off a bit of excess plastic, but they clean up pretty nicely. Even the crow's nest, this print is actually very smooth. This particular part, there was a little bit of excess plastic, a bit of a misprint, and that section is used on the mast. After that, it was beer break time, and it's time to start painting. So I used Vallejo Game Color, and I mixed that with a little bit of airbrush thinner until I got to the consistency of about skim milk. That's the easiest way to put it. From here on out, you'll see me paint in a downward direction, and the reason for this is because I want to create that shadowing effect under the model, which is the reason I went with a brown PLA over a white or a bone. I wanted to have those shadows kind of bleed through if you were to pick this part up upside down. As this video continues to go through and show the base coat, I think I'd like to go ahead and talk a little bit about this ship. I'm using the rules from the Ghosts of Saltmarsh campaign from D&D 5e, and this particular ship is going to be pretty cool because it's going to be a ghost ship, and the rules for that can be found on page 210. So ghost ships are incorporeal vessels that carry undead crews. The crews often died in a grisly manner and have unfinished business that keeps them tethered to the material plane. They sometimes serve necromancers, but more often these crews are beholden to no master. A ghost ship has the same statistics as a normal ship of its ship type with the following changes. The ship has resistance to the following damage types: acid, fire, lightning, and thunder, as well as bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing from non-magical attacks. The ship is immune to cold, necrotic, poison, and psychic damage. The ship can move through other creatures and objects as if they were difficult terrain. It takes 1d10 force damage if it ends its turn inside an object. Crew members and officers on good and neutral ghost ships are often ghosts. On evil ships, the crew members are 90% skeletons and zombies, even a mix of each. 10% are specters, and the officers are wraiths. So that's a pretty cool little tidbit on what ghost ships are from the Ghosts of Saltmarsh. This is what this is going to be. So I'm looking forward to the players hitting that. So once I got this base coat done, I just went ahead and I base coated the rest of the fittings. And these fittings here and the crow's nest, along with the ship, all took the second base coat as well to bring it up to color, which is you see me start to do it right here. And you can see there's a big difference here once I got the second coat on. In these three major pieces here, it really helped bring that bone color to life. And of course, once that was done, it was time to give those fittings that extra second coat as well. And there you have it. That's the base coating completely done. So next up was highlighting, and I used the Dollar Browning FW acrylic artistic ink to do the white highlights, and I mixed a little bit of that with some airbrush thinner into my airbrush. Now, I've had a lot of problems over the years with white through the airbrush and trying to get it to spray correctly. So a little while back, I saw a video about using white acrylic inks. And this is my first time ever using the white acrylic ink. And I got to say, I'm extremely impressed with how it laid down. The pigmentation in these inks are amazing. and it shot through the airbrush beautifully with no clogs. And I highly recommend if you are having problems trying to shoot white through airbrush, go ahead and pick some of this stuff up. It's amazing. So here I just concentrate on all the high sections, the highlights. So you can see the contrast between the one I didn't highlight and the one that is highlighted here, the nose and the midsection. So the goal here was to hit all those larger bone areas, the ones that are kind of poking up high, and anywhere along the tips of these bones. So you can see here coming down the middle of the section here how much this white is picking up, even on this light bone color, still like picking up really well. So I went ahead and I highlighted the middle sections and the bones of the floorboards here and started to move along the back. So here I hit all the high places, I hit the skulls and the chest of these victims along the edges here. Along the back here you can get a real nice look of how this white is just highlighting up all these high areas. All these skulls, all these bottom parts of the bones here. Excellent coverage. It added a lot to this model. So I was just concentrating on any high places that the light might hit. Again, trying not to shoot anything from an upward angle. And just going right to town and highlighting away. So as this continues on, this ship is going to be cool for a few reasons. Also on the rules for ships in Ghost of Saltmarsh, under page 196, there are some ship upgrades. And I'm planning on putting 4 ship upgrades on this thing. Yep, that's right, 4. I want this thing to be absolutely nightmarish to the party when they finally meet it on the open water, hopefully. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some of these hull upgrades as this video continues here as we go through the highlighting. So one of the things I'm going to put on here is going to be what's called a death vessel. Crafted with materials harvested from the Shadowfell, this upgrade grants a ship an aura of the dread. As an action, the ship can create a pulse of horrific energy. Every creature that is an enemy of the ship who is on board or within 210 feet of it must make a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw. On a failed save, a creature is frightened of the ship for 1 minute. On a successful save, the creature is immune to this ability for 24 hours. Once this ability is used, it can't be used again until 1d4 hours have passed. So moving along here, looking at the video again, I started to paint up the ropes, and I used the Game Air Somber Gray for this. And the reason I painted up these ropes and these banners along the side here is because I just wanted to break up the monotony of the bone color. So when you're painting 3D printed parts, you want to make sure that you use an old brush, because due to the print lines on FDM printed models, not resin now, just FDM, it's really hard on your brush. Like, it just really beats your brush up. So I always like to use an old brush. And when I was doing this, I wasn't too worried about making the smoothest, cleanest lines, because coming up a little later in this video, we're going to be doing the Army Painter dip method to shade this thing up, and that's really forgiving in terms of cleaning up any missed spots of paint. So there was quite a lot of ropes on this. Like, towards the end of it, I was getting pretty sick of painting up these ropes and these ribbons. Specifically on the nose of the ship, there just was a lot. But here I just used the Game Air again. It was nice and watered down, so it made the coverage real smooth on this. Once that was done, it was time to mix up some Windex and Lively Green Game Color. Yep, that's right, Windex. Windex mixes awesome in an airbrush. You can see here I got it to about the consistency of the skim milk, and then I just used this bright green to create a bit of a OSL, object source lighting effect around all the skulls and eyes along this ship. Just subtle, nothing crazy. Normally when I do this, I work it up to about 3 colors in a wash, but I just wanted to give this something quick, something fast, and something different, something unique to the ship. So I just used 1 color, and I was hoping that the Army Painter dip down the road was going to make this thing pop a little bit. So again, I hit all the skulls. Originally I wasn't planning on hitting these grouping of skulls up in the nose, but once I got at it, I said screw it. I just went ahead and highlighted all those up too with some OSL. And of course all the fittings and the bird or vulture skulls or whatever they are, that's going to go on the top of the ship. Once that was done, cleaned out the airbrush, and it was time to glue this bad boy together. So I use hot glue with these ships, and the reason is because I've built a few of these ships now, and hot glue just sticks it together and it's a little forgiving. And when you break it, because you are going to break it, it's easy enough to just cut off that hot glue and put it back together quickly. So here you can see these are where these bird-like skull things are going to go. Originally I wasn't fond of this design, but once I got it made, I was happy with it. So boys, the part that I've been waiting for, we're going to make this undead ship come to life, so to speak. What we're going to do here is called the Army Painter Quick Dip Method. Essentially what you would do is you would use an Army Painter dip and completely coat this ship in it, and then when it's dry, it'll dry super glossy, so you hit it with some matte varnish to tame down that gloss, and it's going to give a real deep, gritty, sort of dark look that I'm going for here. Turn this crisp paint job into something more grim. I'm out of Quick Dip. It's completely dried up, so we're going to use Polyshade. It's a one-step stain. We're going to use a brush here that's disposable, something cheap that I really don't have to bother with cleaning when I'm done, and just one use and get rid of it. I'm going to bring the camera down around, I'm going to take you guys in, and I'm going to show you how to do this method. Bringing this out here because it's going to get real messy real fast. This method definitely makes a lot of mess. I think I'm just going to go ahead and start at the front here, and hopefully that this quick shade Polyshade here is as good as the Army Painter. So here we go. When we're doing this stuff, we don't have to worry about sparing it. You can put it on pretty thick here and then use a brush to spread it around. A big piece of terrain like this, or a ship, or whatever you want to call it, I could use a big brush, but if you're doing something smaller, you can use a smaller brush. And the true dip method is if you had a miniature, you could just stick it completely down in this vat of shade here and literally dip the whole mini. And this is going to take at least a day, if not 2 days, to dry. So the one thing I noticed about this versus like a traditional wash is that because this two-part stain is more thick, it kind of covers a little better and they don't seep into those print lines exactly the same way the wash does. It's a little more forgiving in a lot of ways. So that's the front section done. You can see it looks already quite different. Much nicer looking, much more depth to it, especially the boards in the middle there. The ropes you can see are dirtying up, looking better. OSL lighting looks a little better. I think I'm going to do the back and I'll do the middle last. So hopefully here some of those highlights that I did when I'm painting the bone, when I was painting the white, will bleed through this a little bit and just subtly help provide a little more depth to the coloring. That was the goal here. It wasn't to spend a lot of time on it. It was just to get something looking pretty good pretty quickly. But that being said, I mean, it still took a few more hours than I was hoping, but hey, that's okay, I guess. So as I continue to dip this here, I'm going to talk about the next upgrade that's going on this ship. It's going to be a reinforced hull. A master shipwright can use their superior materials and clever design to make the ship's hull more resilient. Such reinforcement doubles the ship's hull point maximum. Yep, double the hit points. And now I'm going to show you the actual dip method. If this were a miniature, what you would do. You would grab the miniature by the base with a pair of pliers. Literally dip them right into it. Let it run off. Put it in a box. Flick it around. Flick off the excess. And set it down to dry. Here we go, the dip is dry on this thing, and we're going to go ahead and hit it with some matte varnish to get the gloss effect out of it, and after that we're going to build the mast, and we pretty much should be done with this project. So once the dip was done, it was time to hit it with the matte varnish spray. I just used some, just pretty much hardware store Rust-Oleum matte varnish, but it works well on this. You want to make sure you get a real good heavy coat on this to hit all the nooks and crannies so you don't get a lot of gloss effects that the shade or the stain will leave through. Once that was done, it was time to assemble the mast. And I had a few wooden sticks lying around, so that's the ones I used. They weren't like perfectly the sizes that I needed, but I made it work. So I just used my X-Acto knife and cut them to length and cleaned up the excess splinters on the edges there. Yeah, you get a little groove in this and give it a crack. It should crack off fairly nicely. So I went ahead and made all the larger and smaller mast sections, at least I thought I did. And I mixed up some more somber gray. This time I add a little bit of Vallejo black in it as well to try and make this a dark looking mast. I didn't want a normal wood color. And I used some sticky tack just to hold these masses upright while they dried. And I went to town, just started spraying these things up. No particular reason I used the airbrush here. It was just all out in front of me, and I said, whatever, I'll use the airbrush versus a normal brush, but there's no real big difference there. So I set those things to dry, and I started working on assembly. I had to drill out a couple of sections here. Like I said, I didn't have the proper size wooden dowels, so I just used what I had. And then I use hot glue actually to assemble this. Now normally I wouldn't use hot glue because it makes such a big mess, but after building a few of these ships and having these masts get knocked over and broke and ripped and pulled on, honestly hot glue is the most forgiving and flexible out of all the glues here, so I've just been using hot glue. And basically I'll just shove these dollies into the slots and then tack some glue on them after to get them into a proper position here and a nice firm hold. Here, this is the imp skull, or the bull kind of looks like. That went right on top, and this is actually used as the cross member to hold the upper part of the mast. These little skull caps go on, and this another one for the lower part of the mast here under the crow's nest. So this particular ship is only a one mast ship. It's not a double or a triple mast, so I was kind of thankful for that at this point because this was such a long project to build. Here I made a bit of a mistake. I shouldn't have glued it and then stuck the cross member in. I honestly don't know what I was thinking. I knew that was going to happen, and I made a real big mess on the end of it here, and I had to glue it anyway after the fact. So I learned my lesson, and the upper one I slid in, and then I put some glue in place here, not to make that mistake the second time. Once that was dry, I just started to fit on the lower, the jib boom sections here. So while this video is going, I'm going to talk about the next upgrade I'm going to put on this ship, and it is called Screaming Sails. Woven from the energy of captured wraiths and boundless spirits of a banshee, these sails groan mournfully when they catch the wind. As an action while within 5 feet of the sails, the ship's captain can cause the sails to unleash a howl. Every creature hostile to the ship who is on board or within 300 feet of it must succeed a DC 14 wisdom saving throw, or the creature takes 4d6 psychic damage and is frightened for 1 minute. Once this ability has been used, it can't be used again until 2d6 hours have passed. Now back to the video. You can see here I actually forgot to make a couple of dowel sections, so I just cut them off and glued them in place and had to paint them up. This time I just used my brush because I didn't want to bother with taking the airbrush out. So I pretty much went to town, cut those off, and painted them super quickly just to get some paint on there. Before this paint even dried, really, I was back to gluing and glued on these skull cap sections right at the end. I'm not planning on putting the ropes on here and the rigging because it just totally gets in the way when you're trying to maneuver your miniatures around on the board, and it's like really frustrating, so I don't bother with the ropes anymore. And then some Nuln Oil, good old Citadel Nuln Oil, to try to just dirty up and grease up this mask because it was looking a little too clean, a little too crisp. So I just give it one big quick coat of that and set it down to dry for a little bit. And then I started to build the sails. I had this old rag, this old baby cloth that I had kicking around that was perfect. So I just started cutting and tearing this thing up into relative size that I needed for the sails. And I wanted to make tattered sails here, so I just started randomly cutting and pulling on this thing to kind of make this tattered look. And because this was so worn and old, it really kind of got the look that I was going for quite easily. Again, normally I wouldn't put the sails on the ships for no other reason than it really gets in the way from maneuvering models. But I figured these were all ripped up and torn up, and there was only one mast, so if I was going to do a ghost ship, I needed tattered sails. So again, a little bit of hot glue, and these things just went right in place, easily enough. So as you can see here, I just pretty much put the bead of hot glue and put them on. I think I'm going to talk about another ship upgrade we want to do here. Why not? Let's talk about Bones of the Endless Toil, another upgrade on the ship. The bones of ancient mysterious creatures on the ship. Potent runes crawled across these remains, emit a sickly green radiance. When a humanoid dies aboard this ship, that creature must make a DC 12 wisdom saving throw. On a successful save, it dies as normal. If it fails, it immediately rises as a zombie, obedient to the ship's captain. The zombie gains a working knowledge of the ship, allowing it to serve as a member of the crew. A number of creatures equal to the ship's creature capacity can be animated in this manner at any given time. So that should be interesting if anybody dies aboard the ship. So finally here, I just put on a couple of more ripped up, tattered pieces of sails along this back section here, just to finish out the mast of the ship. Again, this hot glue just took to this fabric and stuck it real firmly, real nicely to the mast here. Worked out real cleanly, and that's it. That's pretty much the mast assembled right there. Ooh, spooky. So there you have it, guys. This project totally finished. I had a blast making this thing. If I had my time back, I would have done a couple of things a little differently. I probably would have gave it a second coat of Army Painter dip method and maybe shaded up those mast sections a little more. But overall, I'm pretty happy with this project. It took a lot longer than I thought, but hey. So when the party finally meets this Undead Pirate ship, I'm going to do a recap of that entire encounter. I'm going to put it on my channel under one of my D&D encounter videos, and I cannot wait for the players to see this thing. It's going to be pretty cool. So if you like that video, guys, smash the like button, hit subscribe. I'm going to be doing some more 3D printing D&D videos in the future. Not sure what's coming up next, but it depends on what the party does. Till next time, take care, guys.